Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have another episode in our Spoiler Spotlight series in which I talk about, well, spoilers and tell you what my thoughts are on them. But before that, just a quick reminder to click subscribe if you enjoy my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and your support means everything to me.
And today we're going to be talking about Bloodline Ripper. For 3 colorless and 3 black, it's a creature vampire assassin with flying, ward, sacrifice a creature, and whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So I know what you're probably thinking, this is a 6 mana aristocrats payoff, what's even notable about this? But I do think there are a couple of things worth mentioning. And let's start off with the fact that it's got a decent body. A 6/5 flyer with ward sacrifice a creature is quite good and should be able to swing in a couple of times because most of the time people don't want to be sacrificing their creatures to remove your stuff. As for the wording of the card, it's not the best, but it's also not the worst. So having someone lose 2 life and you gain 2 life is much better than your normal aristocrats trigger, and it works whenever any creature dies, whether it's yours, your opponent's, or a token, so that's obviously very strong. However, you do have to choose a target opponent for this to affect, and it's not each opponent, which is slightly weaker than it could potentially be otherwise. That's still a really strong trigger though, and I think the reason people are a little bit taken aback by this one is the fact that you might spend 6 mana and then someone instantly removes it. But if you're playing this in aristocrats, which is where it should be played, then you're going to have a bunch of sack outlets and a bunch of tokens and stuff you want to sack out already most of the time when you play this out. That means that you can just respond to whatever's targeting it by sacrificing a bunch of stuff, and at that point you're draining 2 life per sack. That's much better than your normal aristocrats trigger, and of course you can still play other aristocrats triggers, so that will quickly add up and it makes killing people very easy. But because of the fact that this works with any creature, either yours or your opponent's, I think it's fair to run this out in decks that aren't necessarily aristocrats either. It just works very well in decks that want to be interacting in combat. In something like Karlov, for example, which wants people to be goaded and attacking one another, this is great. You just run this out, people slam into each other, and you reap the benefits. It's a very strong trigger to be sure. The other thing I wanted to talk about as well is the ward on this. The ward is actually really sweet in a way, particularly if you have ways to protect it. Because when they go to target this, they're going to have to sacrifice something before the spell resolves. That means that you're guaranteed to get a trigger off of this, which feels very nice once you've invested 6 mana into an expensive card like this. It basically guarantees that if they're using spot removal, you're going to get at least 1 use out of it. That's a nice little consolation prize. But where it gets better is if you have a way to protect it in response. Say something like Malakir Rebirth or Not Dead After All. Now they've taken the life loss from a trigger from this, but it's actually still going to come back into play, which is really annoying. And of course they're going to take an extra trigger because this died itself and it does count itself. So if you're playing this in your deck, you definitely want to play a couple more protection spells in black that you might normally have, seeing as it can really ruin your opponent's day to have this suddenly come back from the graveyard and them take a bunch of triggers from the ward and this dying. The final point I want to make about this card is that it's great if you're running a lot of board wipes. This is an absolute beast with board wipes. There's no once per turn effect here, so say everybody has a huge board and you run this out and then play Damnation, you're very likely to just kill someone on the spot. Of course, if they have any spot removal, they're going to be using it in response because the creature's going to die anyway, so the ward doesn't matter at that point. But if they don't have spot removal, this just finishes the game. So all things considered, I think this card is a lot better than it initially looks because 6 mana of course is a lot. It's much more than the classic aristocrats payoffs, but this can see play in a wider variety of decks and it's actually surprisingly resilient. So there you have it. Those have been my thoughts on this new spoiler. What do you think about this card? Please let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.